It has often been referred to as a man's work. Yet in places like Africa, the important role of women in agriculture and farming cannot be ignored, in particular when it comes to food production, distribution and security, with some women facing barriers.
The barriers for women, it's more on the culture and the stereotypes. I find that as much as women are in the space, women are not afforded an opportunity to lead.
According to Fumulani Ratisanga, the CEO of Fruit SA, the barriers faced by women in certain places go beyond the agricultural industry and can be found in multiple sectors.
I think the barriers are not necessarily unique to agriculture. These are the barriers that women face across all sectors.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Africa Today with me, Sheila Nelima.
And I'm Mubarak Kenya. In our program today, we'll be focusing on agricultural inequality in Africa, and a little later on in the program, we'll look at how stranded Ethiopian migrants are caught up in a conflict in Yemen with no way out.
And also we have news from all over Africa and your comments.
Don't forget, you can share your thoughts on this topic by joining us on Twitter by using the handle @RealAfricaToday. We'd love to hear from you.
Agriculture inequality in Africa. Africa has been described as the cradle of life due to its rich heritage and abundant supply of natural resources. Economically, Africa is also emerging from the shadows, with estimates back in 2017 suggesting that Africa was expected to see between 3.4% and 4.3% growth. However, the arrival of the coronavirus in 2020 changed all predictions, as the IMF now predicts Africa's economy will shrink 1.5% rather than grow.
Agriculture could be the saving grace for the African economy and its important sectors. Africa has plenty of land that is suitable for agriculture and can thus provide financial security, access to good education for the children, a better home, and a better life.
The potential is phenomenal. Unfortunately, this potential remains mostly untapped, and therefore farmers face major challenges in their daily lives.
The challenges I face, one is I don't have access to better yielding seeds. I don't have access to information on where I can get fertilizer if I need to get it, and access to finance.
The role of women could be the key to emerging from the recession, as around 80% of foodstuffs on the continent is produced by women, and around 20% of smallholds are owned by women. It seems then that agriculture and women go hand in hand towards the African economy.
These farmers receive trainings. We give them inputs, and these inputs, beans and soya, which are very nutritive. Women farmers are appreciated. Their children are no longer malnourished. Secondly, their homes are now not the way they were, because now farmers are dressing well. Even their children are doing well. Not like they used to be, because men could go and drink, women could suffer at home.
We asked Linda Masarira, a Zimbabwean politician and president of Labour Economists and African Democrats, also known as LEAD, as to how important the role of agriculture is on the African economy.
Agriculture is an important aspect of the economy of Africa. Without agriculture, Africa would have been long economically dead. Africa has to diversify its economy, embrace economic diversification, and focus on agribusiness to lift the continent out of poverty. This is necessitated by the fact that the continent is urbanizing at a very fast rate because of urbanization, hence the need to turn bright prospects into employment opportunities for a populace. We need to boost agricultural productivity and achieve sustainable industrial and agribusiness development for the purposes of wealth and job creation.
Linda Masarira, Zimbabwean politician and political analyst. Stay tuned for more.
When we look at the sheer size and diverse environments of Africa, it is clear that the opportunity to grow food and crops all year round is possible, with different parts of the continent enjoying different abilities when it comes to producing goods. However, issues such as climate change, pollution, and the environment all play a part in what is produced.
South Africa's seasons and soil quality is of such a nature that more than one crop per year is not possible, while in Uganda and Kenya and in Malawi you can actually have 2 to 3 crops, and the soil is wonderful, and so therefore it's possible to have a diversity of crops as a family to produce for your food needs.
Agriculture forms a significant portion of the economies of all African countries. As a sector, it can therefore contribute towards major continental priorities, such as eradicating poverty and hunger, boosting intra-Africa trade and investments, rapid industrialization and economic diversification, sustainable resource and environmental management, and creating jobs, human security, and shared prosperity. So what then are the most common types of agriculture in Africa?
There are 2 main types of farming in Africa. We've got garden crops and field crops grown mostly from seeds. One of the oldest and most important crops in Africa that is grown in most African soils is the yam, a starchy plant, which is sometimes mistaken as sweet potato. We also have a lot of countries that major in livestock rearing, from cattle ranching, piggery, goat farming, etc., etc. Africa is a proud continent that can feed its people, and most of our farming in Africa is usually done for subsistence. But for us to be able to grow Africa's economy, we need to move over from subsistence farming to commercial farming, and all African governments should ensure that they've got budgets that feed into agribusiness so that Africa becomes food secure and stop depending on aid from foreign Western and Eastern countries. Together we can make this a reality. Together we can make Africa the powerhouse of agribusiness in the world. There is nothing impossible under the sun, but we need political leaders in Africa. We have the political will to develop Africa, to ensure that Africa can feed its people without depending from aid from other countries.
But when it comes to the hard work and labor put into the agricultural industry, it seems that women are not being treated so well. With the bulk of the work coming from women, what then are your thoughts on this?
Women perform the bulk of the work in agriculture in Africa. Combined with new evidence of non-negligible gender gap in agriculture productivity, this has motivated increased attention to raising agricultural productivity among African women. Doing so is not only seen as important for empowering Africa's women or improving development of the next generation, but also as an important vehicle to increase Africa's food supply, which is a key objective of the agenda of African and international policy makers. It is of paramount importance to note that generally, the primary factor underlying differences in female labor input across households is the gender composition of the households in most African families.
Agriculture in Africa has a massive social and economic footprint. More than 60% of the population of sub-Saharan Africa is smallholder farmers, and about 23% of sub-Saharan Africa's gross domestic product comes from agriculture. Yet, Africa's full potential remains to be untapped in terms of agriculture. And now in this segment of our program, my colleague will be presenting you with news and events from across Africa. What do you have today for us, Sheila?
Thank you, Henia. This week we touch on archaeological findings, a bit of sports, but first, Belgium lawmakers have agreed to set up a panel to look into their colonial history in Congo, Rwanda and Burundi. The European nation has been accused of having been the most brutal, causing immeasurable suffering and humiliation. Now, still on history, The African archaeologists record have made another incredible discovery. The world's oldest bedding was found in the Border Cave in the Lebombo Mountains, South Africa. The cave yielded plant remains pointing that the occupants used grass beddings on ash dating back 200,000 years ago. Now on to tourism. The World Travel and Tourism Council has certified Tanzania as a safe zone for travel. This indicates that Tanzania has complied with all the safety and containment measures against COVID-19. The endorsement now gives tourists a green light in visiting the East African state. Now to an environmental disaster. Rising water levels along the Great Rift Valley have forced thousands from their homes. Lake Baringo of fresh water and Lake Bogoria of salty water in Kenya are slowly closing in. The disaster has been blamed on deforestation and heavy rainfall. Now in the field of arts, an online selling exhibition at Christie's opened in late July. Say It Out Loud, I'm Black and Proud is dedicated to promote black art. The show aims to prevent buyers from earning unfair profits with no gains for the artists. It offers a contract that ensures that the artists receive 100% of the proceeds or 15% on resale if sold in less than 5 years. Now in sports, Ugandan Joshua Cheptegei broke the 16-year-old 5,000-meter world record. The Ugandan sportsman had promised to shatter the record and did just that. Well done, champ. This brings us to the end of this part. Visit our social media pages to get daily news updates and our weekly episodes. Don't go away, we will be back soon.
Victims of COVID-19.
It is well documented that Africa has one of the world's highest cases of human migration, with many people fleeing hunger, conflict, and lack of opportunities to find a better life elsewhere. For one country in particular, Ethiopia, thousands of people set off on foot each year heading for Saudi Arabia in search of work on a journey that covers some 2,000 kilometers. However, once they reach the shores of Yemen, the real problems begin.
COVID-19 related restrictions have led to a 90% reduction in migrant arrivals in Yemen between February to June. More than 14,500 migrants today are estimated to be stranded in Yemen's Aden, Marib, Laj, and Saada governorates. These migrants face increasing dangers throughout Yemen.
Border security along the route has also caused at least 14,500 Ethiopian migrants to become stranded in Yemen, without access to basic services like healthcare and clean water. Their living conditions are dire. Many are sleeping out in the open, while others are staying in abandoned buildings, putting them at greater risk of exposure to COVID-19.
They also have caused tens of thousands of Ethiopian migrants to be stranded on their journeys. There appears to be severe discrimination against the Ethiopians by some people in Yemen, with racial slurs directed at the migrants once they make land.
In addition to the forced removals, fears about COVID-19 have led to migrants in Yemen experience verbal and physical harassment, increased detention, and movement restrictions.
Joining us on the show today is writer and activist Keith Hammond Snow. Thanks for joining us today. So let's get to the heart of the problem. Why are Ethiopians leaving in the first place, and why is the number rising?
As with many other sub-Saharan or North African countries, the problems of migration and immigrants all revolve around generally human rights atrocities, human rights abuses, serious environmental problems, desertification, drought, starvation, hunger, poverty, and a lack of opportunity.
Thank you, Hammond Snow. As with many cases of migrants coming to Europe, racism appears to be one of the main welcomes when they arrive at their target destinations, with Saudi Arabia, the main destination, being one of the most racist places of all, especially when held in Saudi detention centers upon arrival.
Saudi authorities opened fire, killing scores of migrants before allowing hundreds of Ethiopians to enter the country. They are now arbitrarily detaining them in facilities in Jizan province. Detainees are given little food. Some receive just 3 pieces of bread and a bottle of water a day.
As to whether the way migrants were being treated was a scapegoat to discriminate against Ethiopian migrants as carriers of the COVID-19 virus.
I think the whole situation of migrants leaving Ethiopia, transitioning, traveling across the sea and into Yemen and Saudi Arabia definitely revolves around racism on many levels between the different people of color. So, Saudi Arabia is extremely racist. The powerful people in Saudi Arabia in particular have very racist views towards Black Africans or even other Arabs.
With most migrants sleeping outdoors or in unsafe abandoned buildings, they're at greater risk of exposure to COVID-19. Migrants suffer exclusion and violence, but also verbal and physical harassment.
The United Nations Refugee Agency and Human Rights Watch say African migrants and asylum seekers in Yemen are being subjected to physical and sexual abuse in detention. In a statement, Human Rights Watch accused Yemeni government employees of torturing, raping and executing migrant and asylum seekers from the Horn of Africa in a detention center in the southern port city of Aden, as well as forcibly deporting them out to sea.
Coming back to Keith Hammond, economic-wise, Ethiopia has been doing quite well, yet the majority of immigrants are from Ethiopia. How can you explain this twisted situation?
So you've got the corporate propaganda structure from the West, the power system, and then you've got the average person in Ethiopia who is not benefiting. And that's not what we're not seeing anything about them. We're not seeing why their lives are so hard. We're not seeing the torture that goes on in Ethiopian jails. We're not seeing the shooting and the massacring of people in Ogaden Basin. But you have to look at the oil map. I mean, look at the oil maps of Sudan, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Yemen, and Saudi Arabia. And it's all mapped out for concessions for these giant oil companies. And I just mentioned the oil. We could also talk about other mining, other extractive industries, other big corporate industries, whether it has to do with production of dams, creation of dams, supposedly for irrigation. So, when the people are fleeing Ethiopia, they're fleeing the complete loss of their livelihoods. And this is not brought out by the media.
Keith Hammond, writer and activist.
The most common reason of leaving Ethiopia is the dream of a better tomorrow, carrying with them hopes for life-changing opportunities abroad and to earn money to support their families. These migrants say they're disappointed and angry. They were sold a lie.
The smuggler told me that if I went to Saudi Arabia, I'd earn $270 a month. That was wrong. I have a wife and 8 children who expected a lot from me. My wife will be upset because I've come back with nothing.
Adding to the concern of the migrants now trapped in the world's worst humanitarian crisis of modern times, Yemen is currently one of the most dangerous countries in the world. What advice can be given to African nations regarding the dream of a better tomorrow abroad?
People don't realize that the journey is difficult. The challenges of crossing the sea, making their way from Ethiopia to Saudi Arabia, 30% of the people in Ethiopia don't realize there's a 6-year war been going on in Yemen, and it's still going on. So hope becomes a big factor, and you're young. Young people are the predominant group that's making the journey, young men and women with children. And they believe they can make the journey. When you're young, you're invincible. You feel like you can do anything. And they've heard stories of people have made it. They are uninformed, misinformed, ill-informed, and they're unprepared for what they're actually going to face. They're going to face a desert. They're going to face boats overturning on the sea. They're going to face exploitation and extortion. And some of them are going to be directly trafficked into the sex industry. Their children, their families will be separated at the borders. In Yemen, they're going to be caught between the crossfire of the violent forces that are fighting over the oil and other things there. And so the women are going to face rape, and people are going to be imprisoned in the most horrible conditions once they're caught. And a very few of them get away and make it to Saudi Arabia. And even the ones who actually make it to Saudi Arabia, a large number of those are eventually deported. So the promise of a better life means that, people have to start standing up to the corrupt governments in Africa. They have to stand up to their corrupt governments. They have to throw out every American corporation and shut them down. These corporations are not going to benefit the people.
Migrants that have returned to Addis Ababa said they're relieved to be home. But they're also worried about the future, as many problems that made them to leave Ethiopia in the first place still exist.
We know about the war, but our problems at home forced us to leave. We've tried to bypass areas where there's fighting. We've not been harmed, and so far we've been able to move about freely.
What needs to be done to help the migrants whose living conditions are so bad? We need some truth in the media, for one thing. The media has to stop becoming, it's totally these propaganda wings for the corporate power structure. And then you've got the white supremacy, which means that the Western white power apparatus. Many of these migrants are young, and they see the promised land, which would be Saudi Arabia. They've heard stories. They're ill-informed. They don't know the situation that they're getting into in most cases. 50% of the people don't even know the conditions of the journey crossing the Red Sea or the Sea of Aden.
The World Food Program has warned of potential famine across Yemen, with around 10 million people facing food shortages. Also, it is believed the number of COVID-19 cases is much higher than reported. With the little testing available, there is no way to control the outbreak and no way to know when the stranded migrants will be able to move again.
Welcome back to this part of the show. It's now time to hear what you, our viewers, had for us this week. Now, on the topic of the Nile River, we had at Lead stating, according to Sudan Tribune, Sudan and Egypt requested Ethiopia to sign a legally binding agreement. I wish Ethiopia commands Sudan and Egypt to focus on cooperations and mutual benefits without creating harmful effects related to a comprehensive binding agreement. Now, Lead added that if the parties' agreement on legally binding agreement is for the best interest of all Nile-sharing nations, including Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt, the legally binding agreement to be open for dialogue and discussion. Now, on the matter of Ivory Coast election tensions, we had at Cyril Benjamin stating, it's sad to hear and see the way some of our African leaders like this one behaves. They don't value mankind. They felt they are superior to others without knowing that it is the will of God in their lives. God is not happy with them, and they will pay in their own coins. We also had a Tendai Mbofana, who has kept up with his updates on Zimbabwe's growing leadership anarchy. One such topic is Zimbabwe ruling elite and fit to govern democratic state, as not trained to serve and protect, but only to kill and destroy. Hashtag Zimbabwean Lives Matter. Now that's all for now. Please keep sending us your thoughts and comments on the program. Tell us what you would like us to tackle. See you next time.
In Africa today, we remain very optimistic about the future of the African continent, as President Paul Kagame of Rwanda was quoted as saying, "The Africa we want is clearly visible on the horizon, and today, more than ever before, so too is the road we will travel together to get there."
That's just about all we have time for on this episode of Africa Today. We hope that you have enjoyed the show. We'd love to hear from you, so get in touch with us via our social media channels and tell us what you think.
On behalf of myself, Mubarak Kenya, thanks for watching and goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me, Sheila Nelima, and the entire team.